Hey everyone, I'm Jesse Menendez for La Vida Baseball. We are in downtown Chicago. Sitting next to me is the inimitable John Leguizamo. Sorry, I've seen the show. I've seen the show a few times, and the mispronunciations have stuck with me. But we are in downtown Chicago at the Cadillac Palace Theater with John Leguizamo. We are going to be talking about his show, which is incredible, by the way. I've seen it a number of times. Latin History for Morons. Cool. Yeah, it's wild, the evolution of it from when I first peeped it to how it exists on Netflix.
Where'd you first peep it
at? In New York.
Oh, you went to see it in New York
yeah.
at the Public Theater?
Yeah. It was a good time.
Yeah,
it was a good time.
I'm glad you dug it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, John, we at Latino Baseball tell the story of the Latino baseball experience through stories and through trailing folks in their lives and chronicling what it's been like.
How about that game last night?
Brother, I was about to ask you.
Astros, and then you go look at the rosters. I mean, we're up there big time, LatinX. I mean, representing.
So I'm glad you started there, because in 2012 you narrated a docufilm in
Peloteros. Yeah.
And I was going to ask
Dominican
you,
experience
absolutely, what did that experience do to your fandom and your perspective of Latinos in baseball?
Well, I mean, I knew we were. It's a place where stats help us get into the door, because you can't deny stats. It's math. It's a fact. You know, they can deny us in Hollywood and in the New York Times and all the other newspapers, but they can't deny us in sports or music, because those are also stats.
Yeah.
And that's the power. I mean, the Pelotero thing was kind of sad because of how, you know, all these young athletes are groomed for the major leagues, but the ones that don't make it are just abandoned, and the parents risk everything and spend everything on these opportunities that sometimes don't come.
You mentioned the lineups. I think it's unquestionable the impact that Latinos have had in baseball. You yourself are a Mets fan.
Mets fan, yeah.
Growing up in New York, you had two choices. You could have rooted for the evil empire. You chose
it ain't so evil, come on.
I mean, they're the Patriots of Major League Baseball. They win all the time. It's an easy thing to focus on. But how did your Mets fandom begin? Was there somebody that led you down the road?
Yeah, you know, I'm from Queens.
I know folks who don't live in the Bronx who still root for the Yankees.
Yeah, I mean, the '86 Mets was a pretty big deal for me, you know, and it just, you know, grew up in New York, and I used to go to Shea Stadium before it was Citi Field, you know, and my Mets were my thing. They still are.
You know, before we started recording, I was talking to you about, I saw it in 1995, you corrected me and said 1994, House of Buggin'. Yeah. And what was incredible about that for somebody like me growing up on the northwest side of Chicago, a Mexican kid who didn't know that folks like me could ever aspire to do anything other than work in factories, because that's what my parents did. I remember seeing you on TV, on Fox, with the sketches that y'all were producing that were talking about like the Castro regime and some of the impact that had on Cubans. You would have the
regularly speaking, you know, we were like activists.
The militant Latino minute, right? Yeah. At that time, did you know that those things were socio-political commentaries, or was it just part of your aesthetic and knowledge sphere that you were pulling in?
I mean, I was always been socially conscious. You know, now I'm much more politically conscious. But back then, I was trying to, you know, do what was funny to me. Yeah. And what's funny to me is always has some sort of social commentary. And if we had enough Latin people in the Nielsen ratings, I think we would have still been around. You know, I mean, the fact was we were totally absent in Nielsen ratings, even though we were 15 or 16% of the population back then. Now we're 20%, and we're still not, we're undercounted in the Nielsen ratings. And that affects storytelling, who's being hired, who's not being hired, you know, what shows live on. I mean, we just need to fix all these little problems that we have.
And you're in charge of that, is that what I'm hearing?
I'm in charge.
Right.
Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and I'll tell you who to call, who to picket, who to boycott.
You know, speaking of your own career arc, how long did it take before you found that you were being handed scripts for things that didn't necessarily necessitate the Latino Thug 1 through 7? Right. When you were able to actually play roles just because of your merit as an actor? Well,
I had to, you know, refuse a lot of roles because it was just like, this is ridiculous. Why? We Latin people are not gangsters. I mean, the percentage of Latin gangsters are less than 1%. Yeah. This is not who we are, and you're demonizing us and then falling right into Trump's sort of commentary of us by portraying us as villains. Enough of that nonsense. Change the script.
You mentioned the man, I wasn't going to, but there are some shots that are taking at 45 in Latin history for Morons. As I understand it.
Not a lot.
Not a lot, no. But as I understand it, the just enough that exists in the show.
I didn't boo him at the Nationals game last night. I didn't yell lock him up.
You sure? Where were you last night? Were you not at the game?
I wasn't at the game. I was here in Chicago watching it on TV.
But from what I understand it, the evolution of the show has meant that you scale back on some of that criticism.
Yeah, you know what? I just didn't want to make it all about 45 because a lot of ththese problems, he's exacerbated it, but it existed before him, and so I wanted to address the real issues. He's not going to be around forever, and these issues might, and they better not be. So I wanted to call those out. You know what I mean? And I feel like I've hit the nail on the head with that.
Let's address the issues going back to probably the beginning of the Hollywood machine. There's always been a lack of representation.
Oh,
and
when
when we do have it, it is in its most stereotypical
improved
way.
A little bit because I wrote this article for Billboard complaining about it, saying that we were less than 3% of the faces in front of the camera, behind the camera. It's improved now to 4.3%.
That's all you, man. That's all you.
That 1% is all me.
But there have been movements now. I mean, there was the "Not Your Mule" hashtag. There was Oscars So White. I feel like actors have found themselves in positions where they're more vocal about it.
Definitely.
Was that always a position you were able to maintain, or did you find that you had to achieve some level of fame before you can say what was happening?
I mean, no. I mean, I've always been outspoken. I mean, it doesn't come without risks and followers unfollowing you. I mean, that's, you get unfriended. I mean, that's what happens. But I think it's a risk I have to take. I feel like I have achieved a certain level of success where I need to use my platform to make the world a better place.
This show fills a void, in my opinion, that we don't necessarily have one that is actively promoting Latin history as American history.
Yeah.
I know that the conception of this had to do a lot with helping your son out and realizing that we didn't exist in history books. There was an erasure of our history. Do you find that people are also learning a lot for the first time from this show?
People leave saying they feel changed. Grown men crying. It's a powerful evening in so many ways, even though it's funny. But I think what I want people to walk away is leaving the theater being Latin is a superpower. And
you're our superhero.
Without a cape. I just feel like when they start to realize what kind of empires we had with the Mayans, Incans, and Aztecs, how powerful they were, how equal or larger they were to any European Ming Dynasty or Tsarist Russia, much bigger, much more advanced. And then when you know that they were destroyed, completely obliterated, and we're still here and still adding $2.3 trillion to the U.S. economy. If we LatinX people were our own country in the U.S., we'd be the 8th largest economy in the world. Our women are #1 in small business creations at 87% in America. That's a superpower.
I dig it. Now, one of the things that I found interesting was how you navigate these subjects in a humorous way. Was there any challenges that were presented in making light of colonization and conquest?
And genocide.
And genocide. I wanted to say I had genocide originally written, but I was like, that might be a little too heavy for 9 o'clock in the morning. But no, I mean, people are laughing when you're talking about these things.
They're not laughing at that.
No.
The jokes aren't at the horrors and the atrocities. I mean, obviously, I'm not spoofing that.
No.
I'm spoofing sort of the attitudes or the erasure and the non-inclusiveness. That's what I'm attacking and addressing and spoofing. And people respond to that, I mean, obviously, those are the quieter moments in the show when we're sort of mourning for the loss of our empires and what we could have been had they not been destroyed.
One of the things that you reference in your show is the fact that you haven't been doing these one-man shows because you're a narcissist or you think your life is interesting. But if you think about how many of these you've put on and the stories that you've been able to tell, you have been keeping the Latino story alive and present. Is that something that you knew was happening from the very beginning?
Not only that, but also I helped pioneer the one-man show. I mean, the first one to make it an autobiographical piece, to bring a darker element to American humor, because American humor back then was very glib and superficial, and started to add, themes of abuse, themes of nervous breakdowns and death, and without me, there wouldn't be a Larry David or a Louis C.K. Seriously, because nobody was doing that type of self-expose on themselves. So I helped pioneer that. And it's interesting you said narcissism, because when I did Ghetto Clown in England, people would come and say, why do you think you can do a show on yourself? I mean, do you love yourself that much? Is it that, are you that amazing? I go, no, it's not about that I'm amazing. It's that I want to show people that even an ordinary person has value, has something to say, has something to offer if you tell the right story.
So Latin history for Morons has a lot to do with you. It's autobiographical. Do you think you're that amazing?
It's not about me, bro. It's not about me.
I'm kidding. Well, one of the things I also wanted to get to is the way you navigate race and ethnicity. You know, in 2019, those can be seen as very divisive topics, especially the way are used in our political system. How has it been for non-Latino audiences who come out to see the show?
A majority of them are loving it. I mean, white liberals and the white woke folk and
the white woke folk
and you know, black Americans and Asian Americans are loving it, and Native Americans. I mean, they're feeling included, and they understand the purpose of the show is about inclusion and unification, not dividing. It's not about dividing. Yeah. Just because you celebrate one group doesn't mean you exclude all the other groups. It's not about exclusion.
Yeah. One of the things that I find interesting is that here we are, and I don't want to keep referencing the date because I want this interview to live on forever, but a show like this needs to exist because it's a reminder, and not even just a reminder, but for a lot of people this is the first time that they are realizing that Latin history is American history. Right. Why do you think that's been such a foreign idea to so many audiences?
Because it's not in your history textbooks. It's not in your Discovery Channel, your History Channel. It's not in Ken Burns' docs. It's not in a Hollywood movie. Band of Brothers, we weren't even in there. And it's just been excluded forever. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, when you find out that 120,000 was fought in World War I and not one hero made it to any movie or history textbook, and we had like the biggest heroes that they took our stories and turned them into white stories, like Nick Lucerno, who blew up the biggest gun nests in Germany while maintaining fire on the Germans for 3 hours and got a La Croix de la Guerre. Marcel Cerna, who captured 24 Germans while being shot at and injured and saved his platoon and got a Purple Heart. And then in World War II, we had Gil Bosquez, who was the Mexican Schindler, who saved 40,000 Jews, got them to Mexico, refugeed, and 39,000 more than Oscar Schindler, but there's no movie about that. A man who did so much more.
I'm going to write that movie, you're going to star in it, and we're going to make this happen.
That's right. You heard it right here.
This is the Brown Coalition that everyone's talking about. Lastly, John, what do you think the impact of a show like this will have on other Latino entertainers, perhaps sparking the idea that we also can tell our stories?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a call to action, and it starts here. You know, you starts changing one person at a time and realizing that they can be activated. You know, and that you can do something every day. You can call, you can write letters, you can run for office, register people to vote, you can boycott, you can picket. I mean, there's so much you could do to make a change, and you have to do something. You can't just sit back and wait for somebody else to do it for you.
I dig it. Thank you, brother.
Pleasure, man.
An absolute pleasure.
Thank you.